Welcome to the Perfectly Flawed podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. For those that don't know you, would you like to give a little bit of an overview of who you are?
My name is Sarah Walsh, and I am a Paralympic long jumper and World Championship bronze medalist. I was born with a condition called fibular hemimelia, which essentially just means that when I was born, I was missing part of my leg on my right side below the knee. So when you're born, you normally have two bones below your knee and a foot that's attached as well. And when I was born, I was missing one of those bones below my knee, and my foot didn't really form properly, didn't have all of its toes. So my parents made the decision to have my foot amputated when I was 18 months old, and I've worn a prosthetic leg ever since then.
Yeah, nice. How did you get into athletics then? Because I imagine, missing, part of a limb, it's probably not easy or not, the mainstream pathway.
Yeah, exactly. I think growing up, my parents always encouraged me to get out there and give everything a go, and never once told me that because of my amputation or because of my prosthetic leg that I couldn't do something. Like, I was put into sports as soon as I could do sports. Like, I started gymnastics when I was super young, swimming, dancing. I surfed, played wheelchair basketball, netball. And so I did all those sports when I was quite young, whatever like my friends were doing from school or whatever I had an interest in at the time. And I didn't really find athletics until I was in primary school in year three. Like, obviously, we had our school athletics carnival every year, but year three was the year that you could go off and represent your school at like the zone or the regional levels. And um, I had competed alongside my classmates at my school athletics carnival and come dead last in every event, but just loved being out there and having fun. And um, after that carnival, one of the teachers came up to me at school a few days later and said that I was off to the zone athletics carnival because I had a section for para athletes, and she'd entered me in all the events that I could possibly do. At the time, I could barely run 100 meters, let alone 200 meters. Wasn't the most coordinated person back then either. So long jump was a little bit of a struggle, and also not the strongest person upper body. So tried to do shot put and wasn't amazing. But it was kind of my first experience of being around other people with different disabilities who were all there to like do their best at an athletics carnival. And of course, I said yes to going to this carnival as a little girl who wouldn't want a day off school, and going to an athletics carnival and running around a track for a few hours gave me that opportunity. So that was kind of how I found athletics. And as they say, like, the rest is history. I eventually, a few years later, found myself a coach, joined a little athletics club, and just kept competing and representing my school at all the different levels throughout primary school.
Yeah, nice. And you obviously said before that you've been to the Olympics for long jump. And then you've also said that, you were exposed to a lot of different sports. What do you think it was about long jump that sort of drew you and you're like, yeah, this is what I want?
I think for me, like, when I've thought about it now, I never thought that long jump was going to be the event that I went to the Paralympics at. I always thought when I was younger that I'd be a 100 or a 200-meter sprinter, and long jump was kind of the event that I did on the side for a little bit of fun. Like, who doesn't love rolling around in a sandpit? And it kind of wasn't until 2014 where I was invited to compete at a lead up event to the Commonwealth Games in the long jump. And it was kind of a surprise at the time because I didn't really consider myself to be that good of a long jumper. But I soon realized that if I wanted to make Paralympic or World Championship teams, long jump was the event that I had the best chance at doing. And these days, I can barely stand running 100 meters. Like, it's just too far. I'm too lazy to do that. And I just love long jump, that feeling of like flying through the air, and you get 6 jumps in most competitions. So every round is a chance to improve and be better. And like, if you stuff up in the first round, you always have an opportunity in the second round to like regather your thoughts and change your thought process. And I love that process, especially when you're competing at a Paralympics or at a major championships. You get the opportunity to be out in the stadium for an hour and a half, and immerse yourself in that and really be present and enjoy the experience. Whereas something like 100 meters, it's all over in like 12 or 13 seconds. So I really love long jump, like the competition side of it, but also the training side of it as well. Like, it's such a technical sport, and there's so many different aspects to improve on and be better with. And I just love what I get to do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. What was it like when you made your first like Australian team? What was that feeling like and what was the lead in?
I guess so. My first Australian team that I made was in 2015 for the World Championships. And I kind of remember watching the Beijing Paralympics on the TV back in 2008 as a 10-year-old girl, sitting on my couch at home and saying then that when I grow up, I want to be a Paralympian. And back then I hadn't really started athletics, and I wasn't like involved in long jump or anything like that. So I didn't know what sport I wanted to represent Australia in at the Paralympics, or if I was going to be good at any sport. But I just knew that I wanted to put on the green and gold and represent Australia. So when I made that first World Championships team in 2015, the year before the Paralympic Games, it was kind of a stepping stone to getting to the Paralympics, or like reaching my dream of becoming a Paralympian. And to put on the green and gold and represent Australia, no matter what competition it is, it's such a huge honour and privilege. And for me, going to that competition, it wasn't about me jumping for a spot on the podium. It was about being there for the experience, enjoying the moment, and seeing how the athletes that I compete against, how they perform on a world stage, the things that they do, why they're successful. So it's really special to be able to sit back whilst I was there to compete to my best. My best wasn't necessarily going to be gold medal, but to watch the other athletes do their thing and see how everyone is professional in that environment is something really special, and something that, like, as a kid you can take away, and now as an athlete who has been to many major championships, to be able to use what I learned back then to be the athlete that I am today is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think there was anyone in particular that you sort of like looked up to, even if you go back to watching Beijing or, you know, your experience at Worlds? Was there any one particular athlete that you're like, oh, I want to be like them?
I don't think there's ever been an athlete where I was like, that's the person that I want to be like. I think every athlete has their own way of doing things. And I think it was just about finding and watching and observing, like, either athletes on the world stage or athletes here in Australia that I trained alongside, and picking little bits and pieces of what they do, and like learning from how they warm up for a competition, or learning how they do things in call room, and learning how they like compose themselves out on the track, and taking all those little things and kind of finding what works well for me, like, and what athlete I wanted to be when I represented Australia. And so it's been like really special to be able to train alongside both Olympians and Paralympians for most of my career, and like take their little pearls of wisdom and be able to use that to help me in my career. But there's never been one person where I've been like, that's the person that I want to be like when I grow up. I want to be like them. I just knew that I wanted to be a Paralympian, and every Paralympian has so many different things and qualities to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, you know, as you said, you know, you can take bits and pieces from everyone. How do you feel now that you have sort of been in the space for a little bit longer, that there's, you know, athletes coming through that are looking at you in that same way?
It's kind of like full circle, and I'm so aware of it as well. And like, I have been doing this sport for such a long time. I've grown up with this sport, and I don't really know life without it. So when someone who's a few years younger comes to me and asks me a question, like, I feel like it's quite special that they see that in me, that maybe I'm the person that can help them with whatever they're going through in athletics, or give them some advice. But the advice that I give them is what I learned from the people who were in my position 5 or 10 years ago. And the advice that they gave to me was from the generation of athletes before them. So it definitely is something that's been passed down through all Olympians and Paralympians. And I guess when my career is finished, whilst I have all the medals and all the incredible memories from competition, you do want to be able to help the next generation of athletes and help the next person that comes along. Even it may not be the world's biggest piece of advice, but something little that they can hold on to, and maybe one day when they're having a bad day out on the track, they can remember the small piece of advice that I gave them, or just know that every athlete is going through something at some stage in time. And whether or not they speak about it or show it out when they're competing, like, we all have our own struggles and we're all fighting our own battles. So it's really important to remember that, and know that there's a person behind the athlete as well who's trying their hardest to be the best athlete and the best person they can be.
Yeah, definitely. What was that feeling like when you realized that you qualified for your first Paralympic Games?
I think it was almost relief and excitement. I remember getting an email to say, congratulations, you're on the Paralympic team. And it was just kind of something that I stared at for a very long time. Like, as cliche as it sounds, it was really a dream come true. That little girl who sat on the couch 8 years prior to that and wanted to be a Paralympian when she grew up, like, her dreams came true. And for me in Rio, I didn't jump as well as what I hoped I would or what I knew I was capable of doing. But I don't think any medal or distance or placing would have mattered on the day. To me, going to Rio was all about becoming a Paralympian, and I did that, and no one can take away that from me. So the experience in Rio was definitely very special and one that holds such a big place in my heart. And even now, I still find it really hard to use the right words to describe what it is. Like, I can say amazing and incredible and or 1,000 times over, but it probably doesn't really do it justice as to like how important that event was for me.
Yeah, and I find it so fascinating. Like, I've spoken to a few people on the podcast now that you quite often get an email to say that you've made it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like as exciting as people think it should be or what you would imagine when you're like being selected on a team for a world championships or a Paralympics. Sometimes you might get a phone call from your team manager being like, hey, you're on the team. And especially with Rio as well, like we got an email and I was still at school at the time and I couldn't tell anyone that I was at school with, like none of my classmates or teachers, because you obviously, there's like a window of time before it's announced to the public. And I kept like being like to my teachers, oh, like I don't know if I'm going to be away for like a month and a half, knowing that I was going to be away for a month and a half, but just couldn't tell anyone. So by the time it gets announced to the public, the kind of like novelty or excitement of that initial announcement has definitely worn off, but it is still so special to be able to share that with the people around you.
Yeah, that must be so hard. As you say, like, it's an email, like it just seems so bizarre that something so big is, sent out in an email. But then, as you say, like there's that window of you can't really tell anyone until it's announced to everyone that you're going. As a kid who's in school, how do you like contain that excitement?
It's definitely very hard. Like I eventually started to let it slip to a few people. Like I just couldn't keep it in anymore. And like it just got to the point where I knew I was going away and like I knew I needed to start planning for that. And getting that email, like you have the initial excitement, but then you realize, hey, like I'm actually going to the Paralympics. Like there's still work to be done between now and then. Like getting that email and getting a ticket and your uniform to go on the team is one part of it, but the real part is competing to the best that you can. So it's definitely quite challenging back then, knowing that all these people were so invested in what I was doing and wanting the best for me, and me not being able to tell them like, hey, my dreams are coming true, like this is what's happening. But like keeping it a secret, it's kind of fun as well for a little while. Like not people not knowing what's going on is cool, but then eventually like you do want to tell people. And I guess those closest to me knew, but telling like my wider circle was something that took a little bit longer to do.
Yeah. And obviously you made, your international debut in 2015 at Worlds. You qualified for Rio in 2016. I imagine there's a lot of nerves involved in that, like it's your first Paralympic Games. How do you manage that?
I remember when I competed in Glasgow in 2014, in that lead up event to the Commonwealth Games, stepping out into the like stadium full of 5,000 people as like a 15-year-old kid, and like getting those butterflies in my tummy that I wasn't used to getting when I was just competing at a local meet here in Australia. Like there was really no pressure or excitement. Like I'd do the same thing week in, week out. And looking around in the stadium, being like almost shocked and like quite nervous as to like, how am I here? Like, how did this happen? And then I remember telling myself, like, this is what I've dreamed of. This is everything that I want. Like I've always wanted to put on the green and gold. And these nerves aren't nerves of, oh, am I going to be able to do my best? They're nerves of like excitement and happiness and readiness. And it's just about embracing them and knowing that they can help you achieve what you want to achieve. And at that competition, I jumped like a personal best. So I knew that I was in the right shape, and I just knew that I had to use like those butterflies to be able to help me achieve what I was capable of. And these days, I'm not someone that gets super nervous or anxious when I'm competing. Like I'm normally pretty calm and relaxed, but you do also get that little bit of like excitement, those butterflies of I'm here, I'm ready to compete. Like I get to do what I love. And when you kind of remember why you do what you do, all those feelings that you feel on the day of competition kind of go away or like settle down a little bit. And I do what I do because I love it. Like I love training and competing. So when I step out onto the track or into the stadium at those competitions, like remembering why I'm here helps kind of with even with the result that you get on that day as well. Like if things don't go your way, like remember that you're doing it because you love it, not because you want the success of the medals. Like that's kind of just the icing on the cake at the end of the day.
Yeah. And what's the experience like for you coming back from an Olympics? I've spoken to a few different people and everyone's experience is always different. Sometimes they're on a massive high and, you know, life's great, or sometimes they crash really low and it's just not what they expected. How did you go with it?
I've had two experiences coming back from Paralympics now, two very different experiences. So my first one in 2016, I was still at school at the time. So 2 weeks after competing at a Paralympic Games, I came back and sat some of my final exams for year 12. So you're in this bubble when you're at a Paralympics or an Olympics, and you kind of forget about the rest of the world and what's going on around you. And then when you come back to reality or your normal life, everyone else is just doing exactly what they were doing when you left. Like not much has changed. You've had this incredible experience, almost life-changing. And then when I came back, it was just straight into school and back to what I'd left a few months prior. So it was quite easy to be able to slip back into that and just go back to being like normal 18-year-old Sarah, hanging out with her friends, going to school. But definitely after Tokyo last year, it was definitely a very different experience. I left Canberra quite quickly before the games, just in case Canberra went into lockdown with COVID. And when I came back and out of quarantine, like the entire country was in lockdown, and that wasn't what I had experienced before the games either. So normally you come back and you're ready to celebrate, hang out with your friends, like do things that maybe you hadn't been able to do for the months leading up to the Paralympics. But when I came back, it was a very different experience to what I thought I was coming back to. And especially being in 2 weeks hotel quarantine, where I was the only person that I saw for 2 weeks. Like I didn't have any human interaction. And once you've competed at a Paralympic Games, there is kind of that dip in your motivation and things like that. And I definitely experienced that quite a lot in quarantine. I thought that I live by myself on a day-to-day basis. So I was like, sweet, 2 weeks by myself is nothing. But I found it quite hard and challenging not being able to have that interaction with people. And I knew that someone was only a phone call away as well, but it wasn't the same as being able to go out and see my family and friends. And then getting out of quarantine and coming straight back into a lockdown was also quite challenging as well, because it wasn't what I'd left prior to the games. And I just kind of wanted to get back into training and have a purpose again and have something to do, like wanted to work towards my next goal. And I find that I'm very goal orientated. So I need something to be able to work towards. So I needed training to keep me sane, I guess, and to get me out of the house and be able to have that little bit of social and human interaction as well. So my two experiences of coming back from a games were very different.
Yeah. And how do you manage that, like the lack of motivation? And as you say, you know, that interaction was hard and being goal orientated. How did you manage for those initial 2 weeks?
I guess like the first 2 weeks in quarantine, like I knew that was part of the experience of Tokyo. I knew that competing and quarantine were kind of all in the one basket. So I knew it had to be done. And once I finished that, I knew that like the Tokyo experience was over, or Tokyo was over. And so it was kind of just like a weird feeling and sensation when I got back home and kind of realized that those 5 years of work and training that I'd put together was all done and dusted. Like it was now time to find the next goal and to find the next thing to move on to, which is challenging in itself. And we were supposed to have world championships this year and they got cancelled towards the end of last year. So that was my goal, like to be able to start training again, because we only had a short turnaround between Paralympics and world championships. And then the goalposts are kind of always changing or always moving these past few years. So it's just kind of been about being able to adapt to that and know that sometimes there are bigger things going on in the world than just your sport. Or for me, like whilst everything I do and all the decisions and choices I make are to be able to help me compete the best that I can. like the Paralympics or World Championships or me jumping into a sandpit is not the biggest thing that's happening in the world at that time. And it's about being able to realize that there's more to life and more to, I guess, the world than just what you're doing, and being able to, I guess, look around and see how other people are managing things like that as well has really helped.
Yeah, I know for me, like, obviously we've had to sort of learn to be adaptable the last few years. Initially for me, I'm like, I lose my mind. I go crazy. I'm like, this is not what I planned for. This is not what I wanted. What am I supposed to do now? And literally, I just lose it for a bit. And it sort of takes me a little while to like reset and have to sit down and, you rewrite the plan and you do plan B and C and D and use all the letters of the alphabet that you can to plan for all those contingencies and things changing. What's it like for you?
I guess like I'm a pretty positive person, or try and find the positives in most situations. Like when we found out that Tokyo was being postponed 12 months, I kind of just went into like, it's okay. Like there are bigger things going on in the world right now. The Paralympics isn't like the biggest thing in everyone's life. Yeah, it might be the biggest thing in my life, but to my friend, really couldn't care less if the Paralympics went ahead or not. And so I kind of went into this like, be positive, like this is a chance for you to improve, be better, like find the positives that were kind of in the situation. So I probably didn't dwell on it all that much, or give myself the chance to be like, hey, this is pretty shit. Like everything that you've worked towards for 4 years has now been taken away from you. And you don't even know in 12 months' time if it's actually going to go ahead. And it was probably the weekend in August 2020 that I was supposed to compete at the Paralympics. That was probably the most hardest for me. And the day that I was supposed to compete, like things just didn't really go right. I just tried to be as kind to myself as possible and like give myself, or like make myself feel good in whatever I did that day. And I woke up that morning and someone had broken into my car and smashed my window. And if you had have broken into my car any other day of the year, it probably wouldn't have fazed me. Like I couldn't have cared less. It was an inconvenience more than anything, but it really like made me angry and frustrated. And it was primarily because all I kept telling myself was, this wasn't where you were supposed to be today. Like this wasn't supposed to happen to you. You weren't supposed to be walking to your car and finding it broken. You're supposed to be in Japan competing at a Paralympic Games. So I never really gave myself that chance to feel angry, to feel frustrated at the situation that had happened until that weekend. And sometimes it's okay to have a cry and pound the streets around your neighborhood because you're angry and upset. And I didn't give myself that chance when the Paralympics were originally postponed, because I just went into positivity mode, which is fine. And it helped me for that first 6 months. But I really did need to be like, hey, this is pretty shit. And it's not the way I wanted things to go, and sit in that for the day and feel sorry for myself. And then the next day I could go back to being positive, working towards the goalposts of the Paralympics in 2021.
Yeah. Would you say that's been one of the biggest challenges or setbacks that you've had to face in your career, or have there been other ones that have been pretty hard?
Yeah, I'd say that's probably the biggest. Like I've been super lucky and fortunate to never have had an injury or anything that's like stopped me from training. And probably the thing that stopped me from training or limited my training was COVID. And just finding different ways and strategies to be able to implement my training, or I guess keep motivated in those periods where the goalposts just kept getting further and further away and you didn't really know whether or not you were going to be able to compete. And looking back on it now, it's made me a stronger person. And so when our World Championships got cancelled last year, I definitely was like, you know what, it's okay. Like it's not the end of the world. And I'm thoroughly okay with this decision. And like I didn't need to sit in that slump and be angry and mad. Like I knew from my experience that I was going to be okay.
Yeah. And there was a lot of stuff going online during COVID of, many athletes coming up with these crazy ideas to continue training and sort of adapt things so that they could keep to a normal schedule as much as possible. Did you try anything crazy to keep training during those lockdowns?
I was very lucky that I still had access to an athletics track. So I was still able to go and do my training on a track a few times a week, but I was only able to have either my training partner or coach there with me. But with no access to like gym and stuff to do strength work, I just kind of adapted that to be able to do it at home, which was kind of nice for 2 months to be able to have a change of scenery and to just like do things to keep you like strong and healthy and maintain like what I'd done. Obviously, I wasn't capable, or the situation that I had at home wasn't what I would have in the gym. So it was nice to like find different ways to do things during that period. But once everything sort of opened back up here in Canberra and we had access to gyms and stuff, it was great to get back into that and continue training like I normally had. But I definitely wasn't one of those people who created a long jump pit in my backyard to keep me jumping.
I guess we've sort of spoken about setbacks and challenges and things like that. On the flip side, how do you define success?
I guess for me, like success has been happy with my performance and my life. Like when I go to a major championships these days, obviously the goal is to be able to jump as well as I can on that day. And I guess it's quite hard and challenging, like when you're sitting at home watching these athletes compete at a Paralympics or an Olympics. I'm guilty of it as well. When their performance doesn't go the way that you hoped they would as a spectator, like we want Australia to always win and be successful, but sometimes our success isn't our medals or our time and our distance. It's about what we can achieve on that day. And for me, when I go to a competition to be successful, I want to do a performance that I'm proud of. And whether that puts me on the podium or puts me in last place, like as long as I'm proud and happy of how I've performed and what I've done, that's success to me.
Yeah, awesome. And I guess sort of stemming off that, you know, there's the obvious sort of classifications of a para athlete, but what other things do you think make you or sort of define you as a para athlete?
So I guess for me, like all para athletes and pretty much all athletes have their own story and own journey of how they got to be where they are. And I think people love to be able to relate to someone or hear their story and hear their journey. And sometimes how someone got to a Paralympics or an Olympics is actually more important than what they do on that day. And like we saw it during the Commonwealth Games and the Paralympics and Olympics last year. People are able to grab onto stories and personal experiences, and whether it's an injury or something like a hard time that someone's had to go through, like every individual has had to go through something hard in their life, whether in the scheme of things to you or I, it might be quite small and minute or quite large. But to be able to see people who have gone through adversity or had to overcome something and go out there and show the world what they're capable of is pretty incredible. So as a para athlete, like I'm so proud of my disability and what it's given me the opportunity to do. And then to be able to share my story and show people at a Paralympic Games, hey, it doesn't matter if you're missing a leg, missing an arm, you're in a wheelchair, or you're just an everyday person who wants to do the best that they can. Like you can do whatever you put your mind to.
Yeah, definitely. And, you said earlier about how important it is for you to, be able to share bits of wisdom and help the next generation come along. How would you like to see parasport sort of progress, whether you're in it or you've stepped away? Where do you want to see it be in the next few years?
There's still such a long way to go before like even Paralympics and Olympics are equal. Like when you look at like what the Paralympics and Olympics can offer, para athletes have so much more to offer than what they're given the opportunity to do, whether that be in sponsorships, sharing their stories, even given the time of day, like for people to sit down and watch us on the TV and watch what we do. And I think last year, whilst we were all in lockdown, like the Paralympics and Olympics were on, and I spoke to so many people after the games, and they all said that it was probably the first time where there was nothing else that they had to do or needed to do. Like you couldn't go out and meet people and see your family and friends. So you're literally sitting at home on the couch, and watching the Paralympic Games and watching the Olympics helped those people get through lockdown and helped people get through like pretty shitty times that we had last year. And the majority of people I spoke to said that they prefer to watch the Paralympic Games than the Olympics and see people doing extraordinary things with whatever they've had to overcome. And so people are so invested in the Paralympic Games, but there's still such a gap between Olympics and Paralympics when you look at it on a whole. So over like the rest of my career and going forward, like I'd love to see that gap be bridged and people have more respect for the Paralympics. Even something as simple as when people just assume that either like I'm just an Olympian because I've been to the Paralympic Games, or they kind of forget about saying Paralympics when talking about things to do with the Paralympics and the Olympics. Like there's never a time where people leave Olympics off when they're talking about both the Olympics and Paralympics, but they'll usually leave the word Paralympics off. So something as simple as that could be the change that's really needed for us para-athletes to be seen as equals.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, hopefully we can see that in our lifetime and your career, and hopefully we can sort of see those changes start to happen sooner rather than later. To completely switch gears, do you have an embarrassing sports story?
Oh, so many. Like, I don't know if it's embarrassing. I look back on it now and can laugh. But when I was a bit younger, I was running 100 meters and I got to about 60 meters down the track and my leg fell off and it just started bouncing behind me whilst I was like sprawled flat like a pancake on the track. And I look back now and laugh, and I had bruises and scratches all over my arm, and I finally got up. Like I wasn't injured or anything like that, and hopped back to my leg, which was about 5 meters behind me, put it on and just like walked off the track, pretty like shocked at what had happened. Like your leg falling off in the middle of the race isn't something that you want. And someone up in the grandstand like could see that I was covered in scratches and bruises. Like I'd done a pretty good job of hitting all the major points that you kind of don't want cuts and bruises on. And someone in the grandstand yelled down, "Oh, sweetie, do you want a Band-Aid for that?" And I just looked down, and one Band-Aid was not going to fix the damage that I'd done. So I can look back now and laugh, but like it's pretty embarrassing to have your leg fall off in the middle of the race. But to be honest, I do silly little things most weeks, whether it's at training. Some days you're not switched on and you end up nearly eating half the sandpit, or when you jump and you don't have your mouth closed. Sand isn't the most delicious thing to get in there. But I guess at the end of the day, like it's all a bit of fun, and you've just got to be able to laugh at yourself when things like that don't go your way or they're out of your control. Like you just got to find the humor in some things, because sometimes if you don't laugh about it, you'll probably just end up crying.
Yeah, and for sure. And I mean, you know, it's such a weird thing for me to hear you saying like your leg came off, for someone like myself who is able-bodied and not super familiar with people talking in that way. Like I come from a swimming background, so it's like, oh, I want to jump in the shower together, or it's weird seeing you with clothes on. Like that's really weird to people that are not in swimming. But for you, like saying, oh, my leg fell off, like to someone and to another para athlete who's probably in a similar classification, that'd be really normal talk.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's definitely times where like every sport has their own little things that you say or do that if you're an outsider, you're like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean? But I guess that's all part of like what we do in our sports. Like you kind of become quite close with the people that you train with or compete with, and like funny jokes and things like that. They're said like all the time. And sometimes it takes an outsider to be able to point out, hey, what are you like saying? That's a little bit weird.
Yeah, I know, it's so funny. Like you see all the time, like, oh, you look so different with clothes on, and people like stare at you like, what are you talking about? All right, there is 3 questions that I'd like to ask you. The first one is, what is something that you're most proud of about yourself?
Probably the thing that I'm most proud of is like my ability to take on new challenges and be able to adapt. Like I guess for me, because I lost my leg so young, like I don't know life with 2 normal legs as such, but I've always found a way to do things similar to everyone else, or when I'm thrown a new challenge, whether that be in my sporting life or personal life, I always face it front on, and like it makes me excited to be able to find different ways or ways to overcome things. So I'm definitely proud of like my ability to take on new challenges and being resilient and adapt.
Yeah, and absolutely something you should be proud of. What is your favorite quote and or the best piece of advice that you've been given?
The best piece of advice I've probably been given is to just like enjoy the moment. Like no matter what you're doing, just enjoy it. Like, and if you're not having fun and enjoying what you're doing, like, is it really what you want to be doing? And like when I step out to compete, no matter like if it's a local comp here in Canberra or at a Paralympics, like I still want that same feeling of enjoyment and excitement and to be present and be in the moment. And I know like the day where I kind of don't leave the house and get excited about competition is probably the day where I should question whether or not this is like what I really want to be doing. And so like the best piece of advice is just to enjoy what you're doing and do things that make you happy.
Yeah, definitely. Any tips or advice or anything else that you would like to leave our listeners with before wrapping up?
I guess for me, like no matter what you're going through in life, just remember that like there's someone who always cares, who is there to listen, can be a shoulder to cry on, or a person that can listen to you vent or scream and yell about whatever the problem is. And just know that no matter what you're going through, like you're not alone in that. And most of the time, someone else is going through something as well. So it's just about being kind to one another and being that person to be able to be there and support someone is also really important too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for jumping on and sharing your story today. It's greatly appreciated, and I wish you the best of luck for all competitions and training and everything that's coming up for your career.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.